The Atlanta Braves have wrapped up the 2026 MLB Draft, and unlike the worst person you know from high school, they didn't let the money change them at all. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on into Braves Today, a production of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, author of the Braves Today newsletter over at bravestoday.com. 2026 MLB Draft is in the books, Saturday and Sunday. You'd be forgiven for not being able to follow it that well because MLB really made it hard to watch. For the first time ever, part of the draft was on over-the-air television on NBC, but just the first 10 picks. And then they shifted to Peacock. And then they shifted to MLB.com. Atlanta had the number 9 overall pick, the highest pick that they've done in a while, that they've had in a long time. They had a second first rounder coming in at number 26, thanks to Drake Baldwin winning Rookie of the Year, and 21 selections in total. I want to go over who they got, the themes that were persistent throughout this draft. A lot of them we've seen before, and what the industry so far is saying about Atlanta's draft. It's not a grade, because grading a draft now is pretty dumb. It's hard to grade a draft 2 years after it's done because these players have so much development in front of them. Unlike the NFL, where a lot of the dudes would make rosters and contribute right away, most, if not all of these players, well, one, they won't appear in the majors, period. But two, most of them, when they do show up finally, it'll be a couple years from now. But let's talk about the major themes here, what Braves officials said about the draft, and kind of some observations here. And the first thing I think that's worth getting into or worth discussing is Atlanta taking 2 outfielders on day 1 of the draft. I mentioned this on Saturday night when I did the recap of day 1 from the hotel in Lawrenceville. Atlanta has only taken one college outfielder, or had only taken one college outfielder in the first round, pretty much in the history of the franchise until Saturday. And Atlanta goes on Saturday and they get 2 guys. They get AJ Gracia out of Virginia. They get Carter Beck out of Indiana State. And Ronit Shaw, who runs the draft for the Braves, spoke to the media on Saturday night and said that it wasn't a specific area of focus. Outfield was not something where they said we have to go grab first-round guys. Those 2 guys specifically were players that they were not only were interested in, but in Gracia's case, have been interested in for over a year. I've got some quotes here. The first one is on Gracia and the organization's thoughts there. The voice you hear asking the question, this is Mark Bowman of MLB.com.
Can you just tell us, why you were happy to see Gracia there and how long you had your eyes on him?
Yeah, we've had AJ on our radar for more than a year now. He's been one of the best college performers for 3 years, Team USA guy, Cape Cod. He's hit everywhere he's gone. So he was actually a guy this time a year ago. Our scouts were telling me this should be our guy next year in top 5, 6, 7 picks, wherever we ended up.
What is it that stood out about him? What was the big difference once he? Even at Duke, he said he just struggled in the fall. But what did you see about that swing change and why it was so effective over the last few years there in school?
Yeah, I think he's really been able to stay back on the ball, let the ball come deep, and still get to his pull side power, straightaway power. And I think he's always shown such an advanced ability to control the zone. He knows what pitches to swing at. He knows what pitches he can hit or hit for power also.
Yeah, this is Gracia. I want people to understand, and I said a little bit of this on Saturday as well. Gracia was not in any way the Braves settling, right? He projects to be a legitimate middle of the order offensive prospect. He hit for contact. He hit for power in his 3 seasons in the ACC. He spent 2 years at Duke. Duke's coach went to Virginia. He followed him there. He's not a perfect player, right? He can be a little bit passive in the zone. He defensively, that's probably where he's weakest. He played center. It's going to be a challenge for him to stay in center, both from a speed perspective and an arm perspective. So he could end up in left field, which obviously least valuable of the three defensive positions, puts more pressure on his bat. But him being taken at 9 is not a shock. Is it maybe a lot of places had him 9, 10, 12, 14, whatever. So not a shock that he went at 9. Carter Beck, that's the one that's a little bit more surprising, right? That's the one where it's a little bit more, wait a second. I say that's higher than where people had him. The thing a lot of folks don't necessarily know is how quickly he was surging up draft boards late. He had a really good combine. A lot of the data on him was really good. And so MLB Pipeline had him in the 190s. And that's been the note that everybody's talking about when they talk about Carter Beck. But Baseball America, their Saturday Night Live show recap that they did, they talked about they had moved Beck up into second round. And they wanted to push him higher, but they were having trouble figuring out who to take out to put him there. So he's a fundamentally different player from Gracia. And he's somebody that really grabbed a lot of, they call it helium, right? When you start to really gain exposure and positive rep late in the process, they call it gaining helium. He started to gain a lot of helium late. I've got a quote here from Rennet Shaw. The first voice you hear is Chad Bishop at the AJC, and then I spliced in a separate question from later in the availability from Mark Bowman that's more about Beck. So here's Rennet Shaw on second-round pick Carter Beck.
Carter Beck, break him down for us.
Yeah, Carter's a really exciting hitter. I think left-handed bat, no doubt center fielder. He can run, he can throw. He was at the combine. He was launching baseballs all spring. He's got some of the best power in the draft class. And we're really excited about just the untapped potential there for him, given his background as a multi-sport guy, hockey, Canada, smaller school. We think it's been off the radar for a little bit here, but I think just the upside with now polish is such an exciting combo for the profile that he offers.
How much did the combine help Beck?
It helped him for sure. There's no doubt about it. I think just his speed, his strength really showed off there. And I think every team was there, right? So everyone's got it and everyone's watching him launch baseballs in batting practice. He's running really well. He's throwing really well. There's not a whole lot he can't do.
So kind of the notes there. Beck is the opposite of Gracia from a perspective of plate discipline and swing decisions, right? Gracia is almost a little too passive. Beck's too aggressive. And he has a very good contact ability. Like his zone contact is like 92%. Meaning when he swings at a pitch in the strike zone, he's making contact almost every single time. The key to unlocking his power is going to be being more selective about his swings, not swinging at everything, especially when you get into pro ball and a lot of these better pitchers can start a pitch in the zone and take it out of the zone. If you're committing to swing at everything, that's going to be a strike. That's going to be a swinging strike. So fundamentally different work to do on these guys, but both of them project to be outfielders that have contact ability, that can give you plenty of power, and we're going to see what happens going forward. And something that Shaw said late there about playing hockey and some of that touched into a lot of the trends that we noticed about a ton of these selections, right? A lot of these guys hit a lot of trends that have been common for the Braves in the last couple of years. Let's talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, this episode's brought to you by our friends at IQ Bar. our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom-infused coffees are the tasty, low-sugar brain and body fuel that you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack's a great way to try all of the IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. And all IQ Bar products are clean label certified and entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. With over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom-infused coffees. And the Ultimate Sampler Pack includes all 3. Right now, IQ Bar is offering Braves Today listeners 20% off of all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MLB to 64,000. That's MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. The Atlanta Braves finished the first half, by the way, with a record of 55-40. They're 2 games up in the division. And that lead was a lot larger at the start of June. But Braves Today sponsor FanDuel still has Atlanta as the favorite to win the East. And going into the All-Star break, I had the stat wrong on social media yesterday. Only 3 teams have been swept only once in the first half of the season. The Dodgers, the Guardians, and the Braves. That's it. So things weren't great in the month of June. Atlanta's still favored to win the division and still going to be a playoff team. I think I saw the playoff odds are something absurd. Like, what was it? They had it here. Minus 1,600 odds to make the playoffs. It's actually the 3rd best odds to make the playoffs in all of baseball, given the fact that the Dodgers are off the board, right? That you can't put money on the Dodgers to make the playoffs on FanDuel. But after that, it's Yankees, Rays, both at minus 4,000 because the AL is so bad. And then it's Braves at minus 1,600. Like, it's a playoff team. Barring a generational collapse, they're a playoff team. And we'll talk more about the trade deadline and what's coming up in the coming days. Tomorrow's show, I'm going to recap the first half of the season. Reminder, it's not the actual mathematical middle, but the first half of the season, what we learned, what they need to work on, and an outlook between now and the trade deadline, right? Also, you degenerates, stay tuned. Last segment of the show, I'm going to go through the scouting reports of all these kids, like on all of these players that we picked. I wrote it up last night for the newsletter. It dropped this morning. It's like something like 1,600 words or something nuts, but I'm going to go through all those. So stay tuned for that. The themes that Atlanta hit in this draft were very expected. They did a really good job of just kind of operating the same way that they've always operated, right? The money didn't change them. Having this massive bonus pool did not change the way the Braves did things. And some of the themes that Atlanta leans into a lot. Athleticism, right? The Braves, more so than some other teams, have really put a lot of stock into exceptional athletes. They want multi-sport guys. They want two-way players because, one, it's a sign of really good athleticism, but two, it's also guys that, because they've been doing multiple things, multiple sports or multiple aspects in baseball, they're not as developed as a lot of their peers are, right? If you take a guy who is both a shortstop and a pitcher, to use the example of Spencer Schwellenbach, who was both, then if you decide to make him just a pitcher, he has had less reps, less practice reps, less in-game innings, less pitches thrown as a starting pitcher than most other guys who were drafted out of his cohort, which for Schwellenbach was 3 years in college, right? The Braves did that a lot. They found guys who were, you heard him talk about it with, I think it was with Beck maybe, playing hockey, multiple sports, all that kind of stuff. So that's theme one. And then leaning into that same theme and the reasoning behind it. The second thing we saw was youth. A lot of the prep selections here were either kids who reclassified into this class, meaning they should have been taken in 2027. And at some point in time during this academic year, they chose to reclassify to 2026. So they jumped a year of school to go pro early. A lot of them are still 17 years old, rather than a lot of preps being drafted at age 18. And so they're younger than their peers and have one less year of youth baseball, high school, all that kind of stuff on them. So it's technically less wear and tear. I don't think that's the real appeal of it, but it's less time to develop. So they're behind on the development curve as compared to their peers. So when you find these kids with these exceptional tools, they're also not as polished at using those tools as a lot of guys in that same cohort would be. So some interesting trends there. Obviously, they went after pitching, but a lot of the most intriguing arms had a similar profile as far as projectable frames and loud stuff, right? Jensen Hirschkorn, he's probably going to be the biggest bonus. He was in the third round. He's a LSU commit, and so those kids are always expensive. He's 6'7", 205. Big frame, big body, or I guess ability to add to the frame, to add weight. And anybody who's talked to pitchers know mass equals gas, right? Those guys are supposed to get the bigger frames for one, for the stamina to make it deeper into a start, but two, mass equals gas, right? Just, what was it? Cole Dennis, fourth rounder, prep out of Florida. He won't turn 18 until this fall. Cade McCarthy, second rounder, prep out of Vermont. He's a reclassified kid. He moved up into this class. So a lot of these things are persistent across the draft. Atlanta going to find guys who are underdeveloped because of age, because of playing both ways. Another one, to that point, is the geographic footprint. Atlanta was willing to go into cold weather states. Wisconsin, Vermont. They took a kid from British Columbia, Canada. And it's something where players from those areas usually receive fewer high-level reps and don't see as high a level of a competition when they face other teams than a kid from Florida, a kid from Georgia, a kid from California, Texas, etc. So I'm not saying they're better prospects or anything, but one, those areas aren't as heavily scouted. That's thing number one there. And then thing number two, those players don't have the same level of development. And all of this kind of comes back to the reason this was able to happen, the reason the Braves were able to get this draft done was because they stuck with the design, the intended plan that we talked about last week. We talked about it on Saturday, how they executed it early. They took some guys with some money savings early in Gracia and Beck. And because of that, they had the money to go grab those preps. And they had several preps, not just the three pitchers I mentioned on Saturday. On Sunday, they took a couple more preps that are all going to require money to sign, but they saved money strategically to be able to do all of this. Hirschkorn, again, they're in the third round. A lot of teams just took him off the board completely because they couldn't meet his financial ask. That's why he fell to the third. Atlanta had the money. Their largest bonus last year was not first rounder Tate Southesine. It wasn't National Award finalist Alex Lodis. It was fourth round prep pitcher Briggs McKenzie. Atlanta's familiar with doing this. They're used to doing this. They executed the strategy. And my big question going in, and where I think a lot of the frustration that you saw about those two outfielders early, a lot of that frustration came from people who wanted the Braves to deviate from that strategy, right? one of the most common complaints that I think I saw was about the shortstop Lombard and how he wasn't Jacob Lombard and how he fell to 14. And he's the brother of George Lombard Jr., the Yankees prospect. His dad is a bench coach in Detroit who used to play for the Braves. I actually wrote an article last fall about I wouldn't mind him being the coach, the new coach, right? And a lot of people wanted him to be taken by Atlanta, especially when he fell out of the top 5, 6, 7. And kind of like I made a short on Sunday talking about this. Taking an overslot prep up top like that would have meant that was your draft. Okay. What Atlanta did was they saved money at the top and were able to use it to get 3, 4, 5 different preps that are all going to require additional money to sign, because your bonuses at the top are the largest bonuses. And so saving 20% there goes farther than saving 20% in the 4th and the 5th and the 6th, right? And so, yes, they had Cade McCarthy and Jensen Hirschkorn and Cole Dennis in the 2nd and the 3rd and the 4th. But then they got a pitcher in the 6th. They got a prep catcher in the 7th. They got a prep infielder in the 11th. They were able to go and grab multiple preps in this class because they had that money savings. If you were to take Jacob Lombard at 9, and I'm not saying that he would be a bad player or anything, but you're in essence, you're basing your draft on that player. He has to work out, because if he doesn't, you're not getting those 5 preps. You're maybe getting 2. So a majority of the outcomes of your draft are going to go into Lombard, because when he's overslot and he's at the top, you have to go cheap senior signs a lot more to cover for him than if you underslot 26 a good amount and underslot 9 a little bit to pay for a bunch of preps. You're consolidating your draft into one guy versus spreading it out and giving yourself 5 lottery tickets of high ceiling, exciting preps. It's not necessarily like right or wrong. It's just a different way of looking at things. And Atlanta didn't want to base the entire outcome of the draft around one shortstop. They wanted to, and I would argue correctly, they understood the cost of pitching and how volatile it is in the majors, right? In free agency. Every pitcher is healthy until they're not. And just about every single pitcher, if you go back and you look at the best performing pitchers from 3 years ago in that season, just about every single one of them has gone on the injured list, right? Even some of the most durable ones, Garrett Cole, Aaron Nola, they've been down. Logan Webb has, I think, the most innings of anybody since 2021. He missed time this year. It wasn't a lot, but he missed time this year. And so it's very clear to me, Atlanta's strategy is we're going to give ourselves as many chances as possible to draft, develop, and produce a frontline starter, because not only are the prices for them astronomical in free agency, but just about every single one of them is going to be unavailable at some point in time. They're going to get hurt. And rather than tying up the money there, I think we've all seen enough players in Atlanta being paid on the IL. You've seen it in the rotation. You've seen it in the lineup. It's frustrating. And so what Atlanta is doing is, rather than going and spending $30 million a year on an arm that is statistically likely to go on the injured list at some point in time during that contract, and if things don't go well, like Spencer Strider, you're either not going to have them at all or you're going to have poor performance for 3 seasons. We're on the 3rd year of Strider, in essence, either being a non-factor or a net negative on the roster from a production, from an injury availability standpoint, right? So Atlanta's bet here is we're going to go be aggressive as possible at getting as many bites at that frontline starter apple as we can and develop these kids. I get it. I'm not saying it's the right way or the wrong way, but I understand it. And the interesting news here is, I guess the kind of the way to look at it here, a lot of industry analysts approve. Carlos Carrazzo of Baseball America was writing up favorite MLB draft classes. And understand, it's very hard to evaluate a draft class right after it's done. In essence, all you can really do is you can say, based on the information that the public has, which is less than teams have, and based on the opportunities in front of you, does it look like they did a good job of maximizing the strategy they were trying to execute? And Collazo says it's one of his favorite classes. Playing to the strengths of the draft class, right? Grabbing a bunch of prep pitching after the first round. This was a very hitter-heavy draft. One arm in the top 15. Very hitter-heavy draft. So Atlanta leaned into that. They grabbed hitters early, and then all of the depth of prep pitching, they went and dipped into it multiple times. He talked about there's few teams better than the Braves at getting multi-sport and two-way prospects and making them into good players, right? Let's talk about those players. Let's talk about all 21 picks. I'll give you a brief little scouting report on all of them based on things that I've read, stuff that I found. If you want the written version of this article, by the way, bravestoday.com. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today. Might be a long one today. I apologize. Let's go through all 21 picks briefly, tell you a little bit about every single one of them. If you're still listening, you are a draftnik, a degenerate, and I love you for it. Thank you for being here. We've already covered Gracia and Beck. Okay, let's kind of skip. I talked about them early. Let's skip them. Let's go to second round, pick 48, Cade McCarthy. Okay, really good athlete. He's one of the ones that reclassified. 4-seam, 2-seam fastballs, both in the mid to high 90s. He's got two breaking balls, like a big 12-6 knuckle curve, and a sweepier slider, right? So 4 pitches right here you feel really good about. A lot of the scouting reports talk about his arm motion is really clean, really efficient. So it's not like he's working through funky mechanics or he's having to overthrow, all that kind of stuff. Looks really good. He did have a shoulder impingement, and he missed some time this spring. So between that and being in Vermont and facing a lower level of competition, he's probably a good candidate for bridge league work and then opening in the FCL, like in the complex league next year, right? He would do bridge league stuff this summer. He would go into spring training in the minors, probably stay in extended spring until rookie ball opens up and then go into rookie ball. And then the goal would be, can you get him to single A get him to Augusta before the draft, right? Third round, Jensen Hirschkorn. I did mention him a little bit already. 6'7", 205. Again, he's probably going to be the most expensive guy in the entire class. Another guy that they've talked about, the arm action's really clean and smooth, so there's not a mechanical issue you have to worry about there. He also played basketball. There's the multi-sport athlete thing. He's got multiple fastballs. He's throwing a 4-seamer to 2-seamer in the mid-90s. 2-plane slider is his primary breaking ball. A pretty decent changeup for a prepster. And he's dabbled a little bit in a cutter. The thing you need to know, I read this so many times. He went to the California area code games. He made a start in the area code games, which is a very common prep showcase tournament kind of thing. He went 3 innings. He faced 9 batters. He struck all 9 out swinging. It's like the most common anecdote you will find about any prep player in this entire draft. It's Jensen Hirschkorn just being absurdly dominant in the area code games. And most teams like, oh yeah, we can't afford to sign him. He's going to go to LSU. It's very likely he's going to come to Atlanta instead. Cole Dennis, the righty, 4th round, pick 112. Kind of a late riser in the class. He was throwing in the low 90s last year, throwing in the like 97 this spring. He's a two-way player, so was a catcher as well. His 12 homers were one of the best marks for Florida Preps. He's got both a high-spin curveball and a low-spin changeup, which is not easy to do. It's not easy to have both a really high spin rate on a breaking ball and drop the spin on an off-speed pitch. So guys that kind of have a thing like that, AJ Smith-Shawver is the first guy that comes to mind, right? He was able to get lower spin on a breaking ball. Hurston Waldrop, it's a splitter, but still really low spin on the splitter, high spin on his breaking balls. He also doesn't turn 18 until the fall. So another really young player. When you go to day 2, lefty Will Libbert in the 5th round out of Ole Miss was at Missouri before Ole Miss. He was sitting in the low 90s up until this last season. He was mid 90s this year. Fastball, cutter, changeup. It's like a high lefty slot. He's got some kind of crossfire to it. They're going to have to figure something out. Typically a high lefty slot, you're not looking for crossfire. As you drop the angle, that's where the crossfire is actually helpful. So they're going to have to figure something out here, but it's an interesting package, right? Do you keep them high like that and clean up the finish? Do you drop them down a little bit and let them lean into that crossfire for some deception? We don't know what's going to happen here, but there you go. 6th round, another prep is pick 173. Tyson Grulkowski out of Wisconsin. 6'5", 225. So big body, lower slot, big spin. So breaking balls like 2,900 RPM, mid 90s fastball, changeup. It's really hard, and this is not a comp. This is not a comparison. Think of it as like a stylistic comparison, right? It's hard not to think low slot, elite spin, and think Chris Sale. If it's me, the limited information I have on him, that's probably the direction I go, right? I probably go with, let's keep the slot low. Let's work on the horizontal game with that big spinning breaking ball and a fastball and a changeup. If you can teach him a two-seamer that kind of gives him a little bit of changeup similar action, but less drop than the changeup and all of that'd be a fun addition as well. Prep catcher, Jack Brenner out of Wisconsin. Another cold weather guy committed to Oklahoma. Really strong arm. Getting better as a blocker and receiver from what I can read, but offense is currently his strength. Got a really compact swing, lots of line drives back up the middle, right? I imagine offensively, you're going to work on getting him to be more to the pull side because pulled fly balls do better than opposite and straightaway fly balls, right? Probably get him to do a little bit more of pulling the ball and developing the body and the weight and the strength and everything. And then defensively, it's going to be getting him more comfortable behind the plate. This is going to be a slow burn. It's going to be a little while on him, but a lot of promise there. 8th round, number 232, catcher Jacob Jarrell out of Clemson. Pretty good defensive catcher, going to stick behind the plate. He's got some decent pop in his bat, but he's also got swing and miss issues. This is a senior side. We're going to save money here. He's going to go in the org. And if we can, that doesn't mean he's not a potential major leaguer. Logan Braunschweig out of UAB, the outfielder last year, is already, I believe, in Double-A and looking like he could potentially end up being a 4th outfielder in the majors. Just being a senior sign doesn't necessarily mean you don't have a future, but absolutely do think that that's the reason he's here, but there's things you can like in the profile. Parker Brocious, Georgia Tech outfielder in the 9th round, number 262, really broke out his final year of college. Average went up by almost 100 points, nearly doubled his OPS. His junior year, he was 14 for 15 on stolen bases. His senior year, he hit 13 home runs. Question is, can he put it all together? He's a senior sign, but you can see a development path, depending on which way they want to go with him. Do you want to lean into that speed, or do you want to focus on, let's develop that power and see if he can be a 20-homer bat? Questions you got to figure out there. 10th round, number 292, Ben Ziegler Namoa, a first baseman out of Hawaii. 5th-year senior. Not only is he going to be a senior sign, he's probably going to get the minimum $2,500. And I say minimum because MLB provides $2,500 for each player that signs. And Atlanta is one of the most aggressive teams at having some of these senior signs, or in this case, fifth-year seniors with no leverage at all, giving them that MLB provided $2,500 and keeping everything else from the slot, which means they would save $195,000 in slot value here to use somewhere else, right? So that's the 10th rounder. Defensively, he's pretty sound. Can't find much about his offense. He'll be organizational depth. The Braves have just struggled with first baseman in the system because you haven't really needed one, right? You've had Freddie Freeman, and then you had Matt Olson. You haven't needed a first baseman. So the organization has never really focused on that. 11th rounder, really interesting selection. This is the prepster here, third baseman Ryan Barker. He's played some shortstop too, but I think he's a third baseman. We announced him as a third baseman. The signability here is an open question. Once you get past the 10th round, one, a guy's signing bonus, anything under $150,000 doesn't count against your bonus pool. So that's thing one. But thing two, if you don't sign after the 10th round, we don't lose bonus pool space for not signing you, right? If the first rounder doesn't pick, let's say AJ Gracia doesn't sign. That's $6.68 million they would subtract out of our bonus pool for not signing the player at that slot. And then we would get the number 10 overall pick, one spot back, next year. Starting in the 11th round, you don't lose anything if those guys don't sign. And anything under 150 doesn't count against your pool at all. So probably the reason why he didn't go until there, they don't know for a fact if they'd sign him or not. Committed to Texas Tech, 70 grade speed. He's seen as pretty raw, right? Where is his defensive home? He's played some short, but we announced him as a third baseman, which typically means he's probably at risk of having to bump over to first. Questions about the power potential. What can he really do? But the athleticism's there, and at times, he's flashed every single tool a team could want. It's just been really inconsistent. He's a prep out of Arizona, so it's not like it's a lack of ability to play. You can play baseball year-round in Arizona, although you may want to be inside and now, July and August. 12th rounder, number 352, catcher Dominic Kibler out of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, transferred from Kent State to Wisconsin, right? He's actually done pretty good against power competition. Like against LSU to open the season, he hit a homer, he doubled, he walked a couple times. He homered with 3 walks against Duke. He even tagged my Auburn Tigers with an RBI single in regionals. He stepped up pretty well in power conference play. He played both outfield and catcher for Kent State. He did it this year for Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and he actually got named to the Horizon All-League first team at the flex position, so utility player, right? Round 13, pick 382, another prepster, right-hand pitcher Cole Dorland. He's out of British Columbia, Canada, so another cold weather player. Alabama commit, but 6 months from turning 18 still. His father was a D1 athlete in Louisiana. I forgot who he played for. I looked it up last night. McNeese State, maybe, something like that. But up to 96 on his fastball, good breaking ball, surprising feel for an off-speed pitch. You don't see a lot of prepsters with good off-speeds because they don't need them, right? But there you go. 14th round, pick 412, right-hand pitcher Brody Hamilton out of Wichita State, which, by the way, Wichita is not a state. Just throwing it out there. Wichita is not a state. Was the number 8 player in the state of Oklahoma coming out of high school. Never really completely figured it out at the major league level, right? I'm sorry, at the college level. 5.56 ERA across 204 innings. Put up plenty of innings. 204 is a good total for 3 years of college. I think he was only a starter for 2 of those. He went to the Cape last summer, 1.48 ERA. I'm guessing that's where we found out about him and was watching from that point on. 15th round, number 442, outfielder Caleb Klein from Southeast Missouri State. Breaking news, Southeast Missouri is also not a state. Had more walks than strikeouts. He was the starting center fielder and leadoff hitter. 14 stolen bases, 8 home runs, had a .316 average, 437 on base, 491 line. So really interesting there. And potential possibly profiles as an Oregon guy, but they're obviously a guy with some speed, a little bit of pop. You could maybe make something out of that there. Fun fact, SEMO, Southeast Missouri State is SEMO, of their last 10 MLB draft picks, 6 of them were taken by the Braves. We got Dylan Dodd out of there in 2021, so that's nice, right? We apparently scout that program pretty well. I'm guessing we have a scout that lives near there, so he can pop by a lot and see players. 16th round, number 472, catcher Dalton Harper. Originally was at Georgia Southern. He transferred to Niagara. He won D3 National Player of the Year honors, and he led them to a Division III championship. He's committed as a transfer to Penn State. He does have eligibility left, so he's not going to be a $2,500 senior sign. But again, you can spend up to $150 on these kids after the 10th round, and it doesn't go against your pool at all. So keep that in mind. One of 5 catchers we drafted. 17th round, number 502, right-hand pitcher John Damazonio, I believe, with St. Mary's, senior sign. He went into the rotation for his final year, 2.59 ERA with 87 strikeouts and 83 to third innings. All 3 fastballs, cutters, his out pitch, which I'm a big fan of that. Slider and changeup as well. 18th round, number 532, lefty Ethan Stodd. He goes to Bowling Green. I saw this listed yesterday as Bowling Green State, which if there's more than one bowling, if that's a separate school from Bowling Green, I apologize. But I do also want to throw out, just so we're all on the same page here, Bowling Green State, say it with me, not a state. 6'4", 220, senior sign here, 5 ERA. So kind of struggled in college, but MLB Draft League this summer, 14 2/3 innings, 28 strikeouts, 1.23 ERA. Maybe it was Bowling Green's problems and not his problem. I don't know, but we grabbed him in the 18th. Senior sign. You can see some promise there. 19th round, number 562, catcher Austin Foley out of Ole Miss. Stylistic comp, again, not comparing him to the player, but stylistic comp, Kyle Schwarber. Low average, can draw a walk, can hit bombs all day, right? He had a 243 average for the Rebs last year. 366 on base, 568 line. I'm sorry, that was his college line. My apologies. Last 2 years with Ole Miss, first year with Kentucky. 36 homers, 98 RBI in his 3 college seasons. 3rd on the team in batting average, which kind of tells you how much Ole Miss struggled offensively there. 1 pass ball for the entire season. I think that's wrong. I think my notes are supposed to say 3rd in slugging, not 3rd in batting average. Because 243, if that was 3rd in batting average, there's no way Ole Miss would have gone to the College World Series. I'll fix that after the recording. 20th round, this is a fun one. Pick 592, right-hand pitcher Niall Adcock out of Kentucky. Those prospect watchers, folks who watch all of our minor league affiliates might be thinking, hey, that's a similar name to Augusta broadcaster and friend of the show, Noah Adcock Howarth. You would be right. That's his second cousin. So Niall Adcock, right-hand pitcher, 74 strikeouts and 53 2/3 innings for Kentucky. Kentucky head coach Nick Mingione said he's got 3 pitches he could throw for strikes. They weren't afraid to use him against lefties or righties. Only allowed 5 homers in college, and his 12.5 strikeouts per 9 innings is the 4th best rate in school history. So he can get guys out. Really exciting that you got a guy like that in the 20th round. And we'll see what the Braves can do with all of this. You have until July 27th to sign these picks. 5 p.m. is the deadline. I expect most of them, especially the first 10 rounds, to sign. In the last couple of years, the signing rate for players in the top 10 rounds is like 95 to 98%. They almost always sign. Now, NIL has made this into a much tougher proposition. A lot of teams have had to pre-negotiate a lot of these ranges and deals and know what the player's number was before they draft them. And we're not going to know what this class amounts to for years, but you can see the pattern. You can see what they were trying to do, and it's very exciting. Whew, 45 minutes into the show. That'll do it for today's episode of Braves Today. Please like the video, please subscribe. We'll be back a little bit later. Hopefully, maybe this afternoon. If not, then definitely on Tuesday with more content. But until next time, this has been Braves Today.